Hey guys, you know who it is. You know where you are and you know what's happening. J Chats is back. So just simply subscribe and share, and of course click that bell so you know every time I drop a new video, you're there with me. Topics may include growth, development, social issues, broadcasting, even marketing for one's business. This is where we learn together. J Chats, from interests to insights. Enjoy. Hi guys, and welcome back to J Chats. I'm JD. Welcome to another episode. I thank you guys so much as always, and I will say it each and every time because you decided to press play and you decided to subscribe and even share. And that in itself is truly a blessing. So, as you know, inside of J Chats, we are discussing many things from health, marketing, your business, even growth within yourself, all the things that we need to gain some insight from. And this young lady right here, I certainly did not allow the miles between us to stop this conversation from happening. I'm talking about, now this is my former colleague as well. I mean, we've been in broadcasting for some years. Of course, she's one of those when you hear the voice, you'll know exactly who I'm talking about. She's been doing, I would say radio because that's where we met, but also very much into television. I'm talking about Reeanna Harrilal, a Southern sister like myself, even though she's sitting right now in an apartment in the Bronx. We do thank you so much, Reeanna Harrilal, for being here with me. And why is Reeanna here? Because she reminded me some time ago that Lupus Awareness Month was inside of the month of May. And I think she said it's also another month, but I'll let her give the details on that. But lupus is one of those, I don't know if I can say diseases or illnesses, that is really just very serious. And many of us, including myself, we don't have much info pertaining to it and some of the things that they can or cannot do. Reeanna is one of those persons living with lupus, and she's also the person, the strong CEO, the president behind the Lupus Foundation. And I want to give you some more about that, which is an NGO. So I got to look down for that, all right? So Reeanna is the founder and president of the Voice of Lupus Foundation, and it is a registered NGO, fiercely, I love that part, committed to improving the quality of lives for all persons living in Trinidad and Tobago with lupus. She's been doing this organization has been around since 2011, and it's sort of crazy to see Reeanna do this behind the helm and still hold 15 plus years in broadcasting, so in journalism I should say. So you're looking at a very busy woman right now who's giving us some time and giving us some insight on lupus. So we'll speak about what happened last month in the month of May, also speak about what she's doing along with her organization to help those, and maybe someone looking on now is someone who lives with lupus, to help those persons dealing with that. Now, Reeanna, we've had conversation before on air, on radio. If you don't know, I do radio as well. So we had that conversation last year. Was it last year when I saw you?
It was, yes, it was last year.
Crazy.
Yes.
So now she is sitting in the Big Apple. Yeah, in the borough, it's Bronx, I think you said you are.
Yes.
Yeah, she's missing home, but unfortunately, Reeanna is one of those persons who was not in the country at the time of this COVID-19 pandemic in which we live. And as you know, most countries, including ourselves, have closed borders. Yes, there is some sort of release and ease on that coming up. We just got to wait and see as to when for Trinidad and Tobago those doors will be open again. Some persons are getting the exemption to come in, whether it's those on the cruise ship as well. But Reeanna is certainly getting the best of both worlds. She's looking at home and seeing what's happening here, and she can run and shop maybe, I don't know, if she feels like it. So Reeanna, always good to have you. Welcome to the J Chats.
Hi, nice to be here. I laugh at that comment of I could go shopping. The unfortunate part about that, the only shopping I can get in is to queue for food.
Watch me. I can imagine, and you've got to tell us that story, man.
Yeah, it's been crazy, but yes, we just came out of the month of May being one of the biggest months for the Voice of Lupus Foundation in our calendar, and yes, World Lupus Day was commemorated on May 10th, World Lupus Day, and then the entire
Right.
month of May and October, actually,
Right.
the 2 months for awareness. And the reason those 2 months, well, it has to do with the split in terms of the with the world, in terms of our affiliation with Lupus UK, Australia,
Right.
and then being on the World Lupus Federation, a part of that group, as well as being endorsed by the Lupus Foundation of America. They observe May as the month of awareness, and then Australia, Europe, UK, October. So I think we don't mind. We get 2 months to,
I was about to say.
but it's 2 months for persons, but for Voice of Lupus and even for myself, I advocate and I speak about lupus 24/7 if given the opportunity, 365, 366 days in the year, depending if it's a leap year.
Yeah.
Kidding.
Oh yeah. Yeah. This year, 2020, is one of those years we're like, whoo.
Can it be over? Could we just cancel 2020?
Woo, yeah, I'm telling you, but it will certainly be set into history. Now, before we get into, you telling us a lot about the foundation, I guess this will lead into that. But can you just tell us a little bit about yourself and why create this organization? Because I've known you for years, and I remember when, we'd see each other in the office and you'd say certain things, and I'm like, what is wrong? And I'd see you not feeling well, but I never truly understood what was happening with Ree, because I'm not seeing you puking down the place or running.
And I didn't look sick. And I did not look sick. Yeah.
Yes. So tell us about that journey.
Yeah, and it has been a very I would always say, I think God really doesn't make mistakes, and he really orchestrates adversities to really bring honor and glory to him, and to really birth opportunities. And when I was diagnosed with lupus back in 2005, 2006, I was still in radio at the time at one of those top companies in Trinidad. And during my trying to figure out my diagnosis and trying to understand what I'm dealing with at the time, I was at a television station. Then I had to come back to radio because it was too hectic. I was at Guile at the time when I fell ill. And I was commuting from South, and it was, at the time, we didn't have the water taxis, the bus, because it was the cheapest way out to travel and stuff like that. And commuting was just too much on me. And anyway, I went back to radio and stuff. And the challenge with me was, I think I didn't even understand my illness. And when I got diagnosed with it, there was not an active group offering support and offering that ability to understand, and to somebody to hold my hand and guide me and help me to understand how to cope, how to deal with this hurdle. And I really had, I think I went through a lot. I think emotionally, mentally, I had a mental breakdown. I mean, it was the worst. But I'm so glad that God brought me out of that, and he birthed something that's bigger than myself. I always say that. Voice of Lupus, yes, God allowed me to start this organization, but it's really not about myself.
Yeah.
It's about the higher calling or the bigger purpose. And that purpose is really trying to give and be a voice to those who don't have one. Lupus is one of those invisible disabilities, because when you look at me, and if I go anywhere and I say, I'm not feeling well, or I have this, many people kind of like, especially back home, I mean, in the US, and when I travel internationally, it's different. But my experience back home is always like, you sick? Which part are you sick?
Ree, that was us back in the day. Remember, we would never truly believe that you were sick, because she looks normal.
Yeah, I went through phases in my workplace, and that people just did not believe that I was legitimately ill, and I had to validate, and that worked against me because nobody believed that I was truly ill. And moving forward, I mean, I look at all of those things as, those were just opportunities and stepping stones to birth what I now do.
Exactly.
And I have used, I have learned how to use my pain and create it for purpose, and also to create a platform to help others who are they are misunderstood. They also go through misdiagnosis, and they go through so much internally, and our organization, we have impacted over 1,000 plus patients since I started. I started off as a Facebook page, JD, in 2010.
Oh.
I started off just as a Facebook page to really use it as a platform for education, to just share information and that sort of thing. And then I landed up a job, and 1 month into the job in the media, I picked up the flu from my boss at the time. And because I have lupus, it wasn't the flu. I ended up in the hospital for 3 weeks. When I got back to the job, I was dismissed. And again, it had to do with people just didn't understand it.
Yeah, we're not understanding it.
And they didn't believe I was ill. That's the thing. Because throughout my years in media, it was always a case of that girl, something wrong with her mentally. She's not really sick. She calling things on herself. I think that was it. And I'm being honest. I mean, some of my actions, I'm not proud of some of the things that I would have done in the past. But when I look back at that person, I realized how desperate I was, crying out for help. But the culture of mental illness, especially with depression and anxiety and stuff like that, we don't talk about these things. We don't talk about how, sometimes we create a charade of wellness, a charade of happiness, a charade of strength, because we're trying to please people on the outside. Mm-hmm. And we're not seeking the truth within us, what's going on. And at the time, and at the time, my truth was I was dying inside. I was struggling to cope with my illness. And I didn't understand, because someone is telling you, you may not live to see 25, 30. Your body is literally destroying itself. You're going to have multiple organ failure. These are some of the discussions that I would have had with, my rheumatologist at the time. The possibilities of being diagnosed with lupus, what could potentially happen, and that did not sit very well. I didn't understand. I didn't know how to deal with that. Anyway, moving forward, I mean, in 2011, right after I lost that job, the Lord laid it on my heart to make this Facebook page a physical entity. And I did not look back. I did not understand what I was getting into. This is a thankless job. People think CEOs of NGOs and stuff, get well. In my case, I know there are other charities that benefit, but in my case, I do this all voluntary. I do not receive any benefits from this organization. We are governed by a board. There's full accountability, transparency. We get our accounts audited and what have you and stuff like that. I don't receive a stipend. I don't receive a salary. I just do this from my heart, because I think about Reeanna in 2009 when I suffered a nervous breakdown. Do you remember when I walked into the office like a kid?
I remember that day.
I literally almost lost my mind, but thank God I came, thank God he had purpose. When there's this song that I love, when Jesus say yes, nobody can say no. Mm-hmm. God had a purpose for me, and I didn't understand that. I mean, I self-harmed. From depression to popping my painkillers, abusing the painkillers. It had gone to the extreme where I was self-harming, like literally wishing to die, and stuff like that. So those are the highs and lows of my journey, which I have now allowed it to be stepping stones to help persons in Trinidad and Tobago, in the world, because I am a patient advocate that travels. I'm actually a global ambassador, raising awareness throughout the world, and I have been given a platform, to do that. But my heart is for Trinidad and Tobago. I mean, those accolades and frills mean absolutely nothing if I don't impact my country, if I don't do anything for my country, if you know what I mean.
And part of creating and helping Trinidad and Tobago, and of course, we're not forgetting the international interactions. But when you look at persons in Trinidad and Tobago, what are the statistics of persons living with lupus? Would you have gained that sort of info with your NGO?
Yes, we would have, because we would have built a database or a patient registry of over 1,100 patients. Some of those numbers, some of those patients would have passed away, but we still have them on our system in terms of the database. So from 2011 to this date, we have on our database over 1,100 patients.
1,100 persons living in Trinidad and Tobago with
And
lupus.
Tobago, yeah.
First question. Well, I was going to hit you a two-part question, but if you can tell me, is there something that, because again, we could never understand what was wrong with Reeanna. And again, I'm saying we because we work together if you're just joining us. So we work together, but we could never see the signs. What are some of the symptoms that you would experience? And I guess that's your journey. Others may experience other things. So if you can give us a broad aspect of what are some of the symptoms that don't show themselves but are there.
Of course. And we must understand first what lupus is.
Yes.
Lupus is a chronic, debilitating autoimmune disease. Now, when we talk about autoimmune, it means yourself attacking itself. So
Yes.
Your immune system is basically your protective barrier to help you stave off and to fight bacteria, germs, infections, and what have you.
Mm-hmm.
When you have an autoimmune disease like lupus, your immune system becomes overactive and starts recognizing your own cells and tissues and organs as that foreign invader. So the body becomes, the immune system becomes overactive, creating antibodies, which are the soldiers meant to protect and fight off bacteria and stuff and viruses. They start attacking. So that's what lupus is. Now, there are 4 types. There's discoid lupus, which affects just the skin, the largest organ. Systemic lupus, which affects all the organs in the body. So the skin, the heart, the lungs, the kidneys, the brain, every single thing. There is something called drug-induced lupus, which actually, that is the least worst one in terms of, sometimes the side effects of certain medications you use.
Right.
You might start mimicking lupus-like symptoms, but that clears up once you stop taking the medication. And the last one is something called neonatal lupus. So a woman who is pregnant, she has lupus, there is the high potential of her child being born, and they're showing the symptoms of the disease. Now, they may have rashes, they might be born with rashes and other complications, right? So in my case, I was diagnosed with systemic lupus. So what would have happened, I did not have skin involvement right away. My symptoms would have been fever. I remember specifically a lot of fever, nose bleeding. I remember as a child going out, I could not play with my friends in the sun. In the nighttime, I would have this bad fever when I go out in the sun from the day. In the night, it used to be bad. And then I would have really bad joint pains. I'm talking about really bad joint pains. I remember at the age of 15 using Tylenol arthritis pain pills to help manage that, stiffness in the joints, stiffness in the feet, swelling in the feet. There was a time even when I was working radio, I could not wear high heels. I would wear flats because my feet just could not fit into those fancy shoes and stuff like that. Hair loss, and then I started having mouth ulcers. I actually have an ulcer right now, but I put on lipstick because I wanted to look nice on your show. But I also, get that, a lot of ulcers in the mouth and the nose, sometimes on the earlobes and stuff like that. Those were some of the symptoms. Now, you can't see my pain. Fatigue was a big thing. I'd be just really tired. Sometimes it took, I kid you not, sometimes like 45 minutes. I get up and I sit on the edge of the bed and I'm like willing myself, okay, I need to get up. And it's like picturing, if you're training, right? And you're using, training, those weight bands you put on your feet.
Yes.
Think of 100 pounds attached to each leg, and you have to tote that. That's how it felt. Like you just don't have the energy. And then I was commuting from south to Port of Spain 6 days a week.
Reeanna, one of the things that you just said is that there are 4 types, right?
Yes.
You recognize the 4 types. You're systemic, you said?
Yes.
My question is, with all 4 types, and you said one of them is not as severe And I think that's the drug-induced one.
That's drug induced, because that clears up. It usually clears up unless there's major organ involvement.
So let's talk about the three then. Are
Yes.
they something you have for life? And is this, you said you were diagnosed in 2000 and
2005, 2006.
so is this something that you can get later on in life?
Yes.
And not you're not born with this? This is not hereditary? This is something that can
Actually, no, there is a hereditary link. Now,
right.
here's the thing. There are
Because you did mention
environmental,
that. Yeah, you did.
Yes, there are environmental factors and genetics. They play
Wow.
two crucial roles in the diagnosis of lupus. Now, let's just say, I mean, coming from an East Indian background, my family tree, as well as even my paternal and maternal, diabetes, rheumatoid arthritis, two major illnesses in my family tree. It was only after I was diagnosed with lupus, looking back, because, you know, when you get this strange illness, because at the time I was the only one in the family, right?
Right.
We started to investigate, as they would say, go down to the family tree and find out, you know, anybody in our family had this. And it turned out that on my paternal side, my father, my biological father, not my sweet daddy that passed away, my biological father, he lost a sister when she was younger. She had kidney failure, but they did not know that it was lupus. Now, I don't know if it was lupus, but what I'm saying is that my family would have had signs of stuff, right? But back then, nobody spoke and nobody was, you know, open about what they were living with and stuff like that. So my paternal father, his sister, she died from kidney failure, and then his first daughter, she has an autoimmune disease. And then I learned on my mother's side, there rheumatoid arthritis. She had an aunt with severe RA, deforming RA. So there is that predisposition, right? So that's where genetics come in. Now, the environmental factors, the sunlight. Do you know that lupus patients are literally allergic to the sun?
Hello. I've got a cousin, and I'm sure she's going to be looking at this. So good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are, Joyce. And
Hi, Joyce.
She was one of those. She used to live in the UK. She now lives in the US. And she's one of those I could not understand for the life of me. This is about 10 20, 15 years ago when I lived in the UK for a bit. And I stayed by her. She just always talked about she doesn't like the sun. The sun was an issue. The sun caused her to feel dreary. She was extremely tired. And I'm like, the sun? And then later on, I found out that she has lupus. So yes, I realized that sun has a big factor to play in that as well.
Yes. So you know, that would be under the environmental factor, and also stress. Stress, we know that it sounds so cliche that stress is the #1 killer for heart disease and other things. But actually, stress also creates that chemical reaction in the body where, you know, you can potentially develop lupus because of that. And for me, and I'll be very candid here, right? Growing up was very difficult for me, you know, and I went through a lot in life in terms of being, you know, sexually abused as a child and what have you. And there's a study that actually showed that women who have been abused sexually, they are at higher risk of developing autoimmune diseases, you know. Which is so, for me, it's ironic, and it falls in my garden, because when I go back to my upbringing and it was a very traumatic, it was a very traumatic thing. And it's only when my dad passed away, I had to seek out a therapist. And I was actually diagnosed with PTSD, post-traumatic stress. Yeah, that, and for me, when I started speaking about it, I could not believe how much my childhood affected me, you know. And my dad was my superhero, my well, you know, they call him stepfather, but he was my dad. You know, he played a very integral part in my life, and also helping me with being sick and stuff like that. I mean, he would show up in the hospital and wait until I got to bed. I mean, my dad was really my champion, you know. So his passing affected me, and that's how I'm actually here in the US, because I came up for medical purposes. And now I'm stuck here. We just commemorated his 1 year, and I'm not even with my family. And you know, the stress alone of being separated from my family ended me going in a flare. That's why
I was about to ask.
I broke out, you know. I hid it. I mean, maybe I should not have done that for you to see it, but you know, it's a
The
little
world is seeing it.
here.
Yes, we are.
You know, and it's been hard. It's been very hard. But I mean, the Voice of Lupus Foundation, we really rely on the platform to be heard, so we can educate. Because how can you say you don't have lupus if you don't know what it is? And there are many persons, Trinbagonians, walking around with some of the symptoms. Let's deal with the symptoms,
Yes.
right? Joint pain, fever, hair loss, photosensitivity, tired all the time, swelling of the joints, stiffness in the joints. And you're just saying to yourself, okay, maybe I'm just tired, or maybe I need a tonic. You know, people always like to say, okay, I need to drink a tonic. I need to
clean out.
I need a clean out, or, you know, things like that. And they're just sweeping it under the carpet. Why did it take so long for me? Was because growing up, I was always sick, but we did not know that it was an autoimmune disease. I was also asthmatic. So the doctors kept saying, you know, it's my asthma, poor management. Then I was introduced to steroids at a young age. And even with steroids, there's so many side effects, because you can develop glaucoma, you can develop steroid-induced diabetes, and there's so many other complications with lupus. But guess what? Yeah, there are so many side effects from being on steroids. But guess what? That same drug called prednisolone is used in the treatment and management of lupus. You know, so there is also some, you know, discussions in the medical and scientific worlds of you know, steroids being an inducer of lupus, you know. So there are arguments along those lines, but steroids, prednisolone especially, prednisolone, calquat, methotrexate, dextromethasone, those are 4 hydrocort. Those are 5 types of steroids that I would have used over the course of my treatment. And that's why I am very plump.
That's a lovely way to say it. I'm plump too.
Yeah, no, oh, please.
But yeah, you're not saying it. So, right. So you just spoke about the symptoms that you, not only yourself being someone who lives with lupus, but generally what shine up in terms of lupus. But what is the testing like? So let's say someone is looking on now. Maybe they have one of those or 4 of those things that you mentioned, and they want to go to their GP and have this conversation. What is that first step? What do they ask for? Is there a particular test that needs to be done to determine if you have lupus or not?
Sure. So testing is a little complicated and complex, because the illness is that it's complex and complicated and misunderstood. Lupus is called the great imitator because it imitates so many other illnesses. So what usually happens is that doctors spend most of the time doing a checklist of what this is not, before they hit lupus, right? So you must meet the criteria for even starting to be, you know, the diagnosis, or to start the testing before you are diagnosed. According to the Rheumatology Society of America, the testing, the criteria would be meeting 4 out of 11 symptoms.
Okay, all right, okay.
So we talked about joint pain, fever, fatigue, hair loss, mouth or rash ulcers, mouth or nose ulcers, rashes on the skin, photosensitivity, and then you may have, and this is, of course, you would not know this unless you are, you know, routinely going to the labs and what have you, but you may have like swelling around the heart, water gathering along the lungs, kidney problems and stuff like that. Those are like the major complications, right? I'm going to say this openly. If you know your body, if you feel like you know that something's wrong and you're not feeling like yourself, you're tired all the time, you're getting a lot of pain, you're having a lot of fever, maybe you're breaking out with rashes, you're probably having hair loss, blurred vision, a headache that is just not going away. Because these are some of the symptoms, right?
And those are symptoms for other things as well. That's crazy.
It sounds like you're coming down with the flu. It sounds like you're coming down with COVID-19, as I was jokingly telling someone. How can you, as a patient of lupus, how can you, differentiate, am I showing symptoms of COVID or am I just having a lupus flare?
Yeah.
Because it's very, very similar, especially when you think about the fever and the joint pains and, you're lethargic, you're, fatigue and stuff like that. So I would advise persons, once you think you meet the criteria of exhibiting at least 4 out of 11 symptoms, you can speak to your GP and discuss with he or she, with regards to the genetic disposition of your family, whether you have autoimmune diseases like rheumatoid arthritis, scleroderma, psoriasis. Those are just some. Even diabetes, it's an autoimmune disease, right?
Yes, right.
Talk to him or her about that, and then he would guide you with regards to that. So let's just say you walk into the San Fernando General Hospital and you say, "Hey, I come here to test for lupus." You know how cantankerous some people can be. I want to test for lupus. It's not as easy as that, because there is no one blood test that will confirm the diagnosis. Wow. It's actually a barrage of testing. So you have to meet the criteria, so the symptoms. Now, yes, you're showing 4, you might be showing all 11 symptoms. What will happen is that you will go through a barrage of testing. The anti-nuclear factor, that's the ANF, the ENA, double-strand DNA. All these are terms, JD, of different tests. The name of tests, blood tests that has to be done for the doctors to identify the markers, whether you're showing positive or not. Because sometimes persons may have an overlap with the positives, and that simply means it's not just lupus, but it's another condition. So they call it mixed connective tissue disorder. Because when I was diagnosed, it wasn't lupus full blown. It was something called mixed connective tissue disorder. So I was showing signs of lupus and I was showing signs of other things, so it wasn't.
Reeanna, now you seem to be, not only are you versed in terms of broadcast radio journalism, but now you're just really good in terms of this particular disease that you live with. So you have to do so much research and get all, of course, having so many conversations with the experts like the doctors who can guide you accordingly. Some persons aren't afforded that as to have that conversation because we don't even know what's going on, right? And especially as you mentioned in this COVID-19 world that we're living in, then you have that as another factor to deal with. What are some of the ways you can certainly speak to someone who's looking on that wants to connect with your organization so you can help them? You go this way and then you do this, and you help them, because stress is going to be flared up because they don't know what's going on. What sort of guidance can you offer there?
Right. And of course, like we have a saying that, yes, we are the pillar of strength for those diagnosed with this illness. We're literally walking with you, holding your hand and walking with you. I've done that. And this is not a make-out scene to show myself, but I've literally gone to hospitals, visited people and their hospital beds, and literally hold their hands through their diagnosis, in terms of, allowing them to have someone that they can talk to and someone who gets them, because I was not afforded that opportunity. There was no support on my end, and it was like trial and error for me. And I would say, if you are looking on, you have lupus or you think you have lupus, you can check us out. Send us a message. The lupus helpline number is 3270220. We also offer a patient online support group via Facebook. And then also you can follow us on Instagram, as well as the Facebook page, the Voice of Lupus Foundation. You can send us a message, especially through the lupus helpline. We will answer you, guide you. If you want to see a doctor, it's really rheumatologists. They are the doctors that really do the testing. Your general practitioner can go do the screening in terms of recommending, because it's labs, recommend that you do X, Y, and Z. But really, to manage your disease once you're diagnosed, you need to be under the care of a rheumatologist. Who's a rheumatologist? A rheumatologist is an expert in diseases that affect the immune system, you know. So I would really encourage persons, because the patient support group, it's over 200 patients in Trinidad and Tobago. It's only patients. That's a forum where you can ask questions, you know,
Right.
without that fear of being judged. It's also a forum where you could just, if you have to vent. I mean,
It's
sometimes
like a WhatsApp group, but not a WhatsApp group. Because you know you can go to a WhatsApp group and speak about different things and let it out. It's like that,
yes,
isn't it? Because
yes,
everyone can relate in that
yeah.
conversation.
We do have the WhatsApp group, but right now it's on hold
Of course.
because I'm not, because of my challenge of not physically being home. I've opted to kind of disband that, because I would not be able to keep up with the messages and stuff like that. So the forum on Facebook, I find, is a little more easier, because people get to really, you know, you can hide behind a phone number, but on Facebook you get to be yourself, you know, through your profile, and you know, you share, and I think it has been very successful, because even with even being stuck up here during the month of May, we did a campaign, an
Oh,
online
great.
campaign that you know, was geared towards raising awareness, but also shining a light on the disease through those that lupus affects. So we featured 31 patients from Trinidad and Tobago sharing their story
Yes.
of living with lupus. So that was I think that helped keep my sanity as well, because every day I was literally editing stories. I felt like a journalist again, editing stories and, you know, just sharing it 8 o'clock in the morning, hitting the share button and having that story go viral. And it really created a sense of bigger awareness. I think we reached so much more persons than what we are accustomed doing every year by holding our public awareness campaigns and stuff like that. We couldn't do it this year, not only because I'm not here, but because of the restrictions owing
Of
to,
course.
you know, crowds gathering and that sort of thing. So it really served its purpose. I mean, we highlighted, one of the stories I loved was a doctor who, she's now a doctor. She was diagnosed during her 4th year, lived
Wow.
through hell. But, you know, in her story, she said, I am Denisha, but because of lupus, I learned how to push through. But guess what? Lupus didn't knock me down. Instead, I am now Dr. So-and-so. And that for me was so powerful. I featured, with that doctor, it just showed that, you know, sometimes lupus can strip you. This disease, I always say, it's a curse, but it was a blessing for me. It built character, it built substance. I became a woman of
Strength.
substance. And yes, you know, and even featuring the average man, you know, in the month of May, we featured a gentleman who's a simple he's a technician at a company, you know, changing tires, seeing about batteries.
Wow.
And to me, that spoke so much, because lupus has no boundaries. It has no boundaries. There's no prejudice. It affects, and it can attack anyone, anywhere, anytime, any organ. And we just want to continue shining a light. I mean, sometimes I get fed up with my own self talking about lupus. I mean, my life is consumed by
No, you
just
need it. You need
advocating.
it.
But, you know, somebody called me and said, you know, you're the lupus lady, right? And I had a hearty laugh, and I said, well, not entirely, but sure, I can live with that. Yes, you're speaking to the lupus lady. How can I help you? And the lady contacted me. Her daughter had just been diagnosed with lupus. And we work with the RHAs in the hospitals, you know, through, making all literature available to the hospitals and letting persons know, if you listen, the nurses and the doctors listen. If someone is diagnosed with lupus, please give them this. Let them know that we are here. We want to help. And we want to empower them. And JD, I actually launched the Lupus Learning Resource Center. It's
Oh,
not
nice.
completely up and running, but while I'm here, we were, over the last 2 to 3 months, the issue of hydroxychloroquine, which is one of the major drugs used to treat and manage lupus symptoms, was short.
Obviously, we
worldwide.
know. And that was going to be one of my
Worldwide.
questions to speak on that. So go ahead. Yeah.
Yes, worldwide. And
Is the
it
president of the
was,
US.
well, I can't say nothing because I'm
Yeah.
here right
Yeah.
now.
You're over there right now.
Oh Lord, so that went viral. I mean, his comments went viral, and then there was panic buying, and then there was, cases of people who do not even have lupus or any autoimmune diseases rushing to get this medication, to take it, to pretend and say to themselves, I'm immune now to COVID because I'm on hydroxychloroquine.
Yeah.
Absolute failure. So there was a big problem and fallout in Trinidad and Tobago. Our patients were not scared. The hospitals did not have in stock. Private pharmacies didn't have in stock, and what have you. So we were able to drum up that attention and support to get the Ministry of Health to look into that. We were calling on his office to ensure that there was a stable supply for lupus patients during
Yeah.
COVID-19, and we were successful. And we also was able to get support through the donations of several boxes by AP Scott, their distributors. So the CEO contacted me and said, Reeanna, listen, we want to help because you've been doing so much work for your patients. We don't want your patients to suffer and stuff like that. And let's see how we can help. And I'm like, sure. Didn't tell them I was abroad. I'm like, yeah, man, I could come for it. How the heck I'm getting it? But anyway, through my volunteers, we've been able to mobilize,
Oh,
and even with food hampers and stuff. Right now, even as, coming out of Lupus Awareness Month, there are so many patients who fall into that vulnerable category. They're unable to work. They're unable to support themselves. Some of them, they live alone. Some of them, they're with a spouse. He might be the only one bringing in an income. There's a case of a lupus patient. Her husband is a construction worker. But we know that with COVID-19, everything was on lockdown.
Yes.
Yeah. So a lot of
Recently
families,
reopened.
could not eat. They could not have, they just could not afford food. They just really terrible. So we were able to partner with ITNAC. ITNAC launched some for the month of May. They distributed hampers in honor of us and in the name of our organization to
Great.
our patients. Sway is another organization that came on board to donate hampers, and we were able to give out. So the work continues.
You have certainly bloomed where you were planted, and you are the strength that many persons need who are enduring this, because you've been through it as being the president of the Voice of Lupus Foundation, and persons are thinking maybe just the way that you were thinking.
Certainly,
And,
that was my time.
We thank you for doing this, because
Yeah.
this is why you're here. This is your purpose, not only to show your strength in your journey, but to help others that are embarking, like that young man. You mentioned earlier on, and we're going to wrap up in just a few minutes, but you mentioned earlier on that some persons have passed as a result of not winning this journey with lupus. And I know, and we know someone in common who is still here, but still fighting consistently, and is an amazing strength that you look at and you're like, wow, she's got lupus. You can't believe that she's still here doing it.
Yes.
What are some of the things maybe someone can do? I mean, you did say just now it's one of those strange diseases that I guess has a lot of persons sometimes confused. But what can someone do who's going through this, maybe try to attempt or add, whether it's healthy eating, better exercise, that can maybe add some longevity to their life and build more of if you can build an immune system, a stronger immune system? Is there anything like that?
First of all, there's no cure for lupus. So, there was a question you had asked, and I just didn't get to answer it in terms of, does lupus go away? Lupus does not really go away, as there is no cure. However, you can manage your symptoms, because there isn't really a treatment that cures lupus or deals specifically with it. What happens is that it's like a wallpaper approach. So when you start exhibiting this symptom and that symptom and what have you, they start giving you the medications to deal with those symptoms. But these medications are immune suppressive, so they cause other complications. And a lot of lupus patients develop other diseases as a
As a
result
result.
of,
Wow.
yeah, the treatment for lupus is actually worse than the disease itself. And let's be real, because a lot of patients have to undergo chemotherapy. A lot of patients have to undergo dialysis because their kidneys have been severely affected, lupus nephritis. There are some patients who would have had to have a transplant. There are cases of lupus patients, they had a heart attack. It's a very complex disease, and it is so
Complex.
yeah, it's complex, and it affects so many things in the body, like, unlike, let's use cancer, right? Yes, we know that cancer has certainly affected hundreds, millions of people worldwide. But the thing with cancer is that you can zero in on the spot unless it's spread.
Mm-hmm.
And you can, if you're diagnosed with breast cancer, there is that chance you can remove the tumor, you can remove the lump. But
Right.
with lupus, it's so unpredictable, you don't know where it's going to attack. So it's not like you can take something out and lupus is gone. So what happens is that doctors spend a lot of time trying to manage the symptoms of lupus and to suppress the immune system, because there is this common misconception: lupus is a type of cancer, it's a type of blood disease. I've had some extreme persons tell me, oh, lupus is the disease in the Bible, is it leprosy? you know
Leprosy. Oh
is
my
it a
God.
skin disease? Things like that. And it's really an autoimmune disease. And it's a disease where the body's immune system is attacking itself. So doctors spend a lot of time with patients trying to suppress the immune system. Now, when people hear immune system, also they think about HIV and AIDS. Now, HIV and AIDS, HIV, it's contractible. It's a communicable disease, right? Meaning you can spread, you can give it to someone. If I cough on you because I have lupus and you're in the room, you're not going to get it, right? Um, right? It's a disease that you kind of give to someone. However, there is a hereditary link that if your mother had lupus, there is an 85% chance that you may develop lupus or another autoimmune disease, right? So we need to understand that. And the symptoms and the treatment is about suppressing the immune system, whereas HIV and AIDS,
Sort of
the
like
immune
building it,
system,
isn't it?
with HIV AIDS, the immune is suppressed. With lupus, it's overactive.
Right,
So
right, right,
that's
right.
right. And you cannot catch lupus and you cannot contract lupus, but you can catch HIV and AIDS and you can spread it, right? So that's to clear that up. And it's not a type of cancer, even though it might affect the blood, it might affect different organs. It's not a type of cancer. So immune suppressant drugs are used, and we have treatments like cyclophosphamide, which is a chemotherapy drug, Celsep, which is a organ transplant and a chemo drug, Imuran, methotrexate, Plaquenil. Plaquenil is the brand name. Hydroxychloroquine is the drug, right?
Right.
That is used to treat and manage joint, muscle, and skin involvement for patients with lupus. So right now, if someone is they're diagnosed with lupus, chances are they are given hydroxychloroquine, steroids, and some other things to use, depending on how the lupus is affecting you.
Which is why we don't need to have that shortage of that drug, because you do need it just to get by with your daily activities. And I think that's sometimes what
Yeah,
we don't
it's
pay
quite
attention to.
crucial. Yeah, it's quite crucial, and it's proven that if a patient comes off that medication within 2 weeks of not having it, they can end up in a major flare, which
Really?
can potentially lead to life-threatening complications. So
So, everyone is talking about it, especially with the shortage. We're hearing so much talk about COVID-19 and lupus. What can you say to someone who's on the outside looking in, who has lupus, but you want to make sure and guide them accordingly so they don't catch COVID-19?
yes,
Because obviously those two together, but anyway, on its own,
yes,
disastrous, but I can't imagine the impact of them together.
of course. And one of the misconceptions or myths right now is that because you're on Plaquenil, it makes you immune to catching or
COVID?
contracting COVID-19 as a lupus patient. That's not true. not because you're on hydroxychloroquine makes you immune to contracting COVID-19. COVID-19, the novel coronavirus is a very highly infectious disease, right? It's it's almost like, yes, catching the influenza and what have you, but because you are high risk and you have an immune system that is not working properly, it makes you more susceptible to developing other complications. Because
Right.
even someone who's well able, no medical history, people here in New York who contracted COVID-19, many of them have died,
Mm.
right? And these are persons who would have been, according to the news reports and what have you, healthy, strong, well-abled
Yeah,
persons,
we're
right?
hearing that.
And they go in because they're having some chest pains, they can't breathe, they end up in a ventilator, and they have died. We need to understand that as a lupus patient, your immune system is not working as it is meant to protect you. You are on medications that suppress your immune system. You are on medications that's helping to modify your immune system for it to work properly.
Mm-hmm.
You need to be responsible and practice all the guidelines of the Ministry of Health, the CDC. Please wear your mask. I don't go anywhere without my mask. I even have readily on hand.
Mm-hmm.
But how would I talk to you, Gil?
I know, I know.
I'm just
A
kidding. I'm here in
little,
the
a little
apartment.
muffled, but you're home.
Yeah, but I'm here in the apartment by myself, so I'm okay, But when I go out, I don't go without my mask. Sanitize your hands. I would say to a lupus patient, if you don't have to be outside, don't go. Don't go
Mm.
outside. Don't go
Mm.
outside. And I'm not saying to be a prisoner in your home, but I'm saying be vigilant. If you do have to be outside, please take all the necessary precautions. And one of the things that I also want to say, if you are a lupus patient looking on and you've never contacted the Voice of Lupus Foundation,
Mm-hmm.
or you're one of those who don't want people to know, you're ashamed, there's nothing to be ashamed of. It's not your fault. And our organization, it's strictly confidential. When you contact us, it's not like we're putting you on blast or anything like that. We just want you to know that you're not alone. And I think that's the key. Knowing that you're not alone in a situation gives you that encouragement. It may fill that little void, in terms of you don't have to do this by yourself.
Exactly.
You don't have to do this by yourself, because that is one of the toughest things to go through, dealing with a life-threatening illness and you are feeling like your back is against a wall and you are alone. But we are here with you.
So,
Remember,
go ahead.
remember, there is us in lupus.
Oh, yes.
That's my
Us.
tag.
I like that. Us in lupus. So, again, if you can share some of the contact details for our viewers and in some cases listeners, because this is also the J Chats, the podcast, as well as the YouTube series. If you can just share some of the details of how we can communicate with you, whether all the platforms available, and I really hope you get so many more. I know you're already have so much work to do with helping those, but I know there are many people who continuously need you, and I'm sure you've got an amazing team.
Yeah, I'm looking at you and I'm smiling at JD, because
Why?
I'm just so proud of you as well.
Oh,
In
thank you,
terms of
honey.
what you're doing and this platform that you've created
Thank you.
to really air issues and to deal with things like not just lupus, but there are so many other things that need to be discussed. Like, for instance, invisible disability. And that's something that I've been working hard to lobby in terms of having that inclusion, because you can't see my pain, you cannot see my fatigue,
No.
you cannot see my illness. And not all disabilities can be seen. And we need to change the mindset and the culture behind how we look at illnesses in Trinidad and Tobago, even in the world. But it's so much different in first world countries. The inclusion is a lot different. It's more accepting. But there's a lot of work to do in Trinidad and Tobago. And if God has used me and wants me to do this, I'm ready, I'm able. Once he gives me the strength and the health to do it, and so I just wanted to commend you, and
Thank you much.
I really proud of you and the journey. Even every
Thank
one
you.
of us, we have a story, and I really like to see women thrive and empower them.
Bloom
And
where
I
you're
feel
planted. I will say
exactly.
that. Yeah.
Exactly. And and that's one of the things, like our organization, and that's the thing. I'm not going to engage in the negatives of lupus. Yes, it's real, that's our reality, but I'm about thriving in spite of,
Yes. Yes.
thriving in spite of a diagnosis of lupus. Like I always tell patients, you gotta fight, because when my back was against a wall, I had to learn how to fight, and that's how I feel. Because if, like, sometimes on my days, on my bad days, where I just want to curl up in bed and just stay there, I have to also remind myself, like, this is not where you're meant to be. You have to learn how to be a warrior, not a WORIR, it's a
AR.
WARRIR, a warrior, and you have to get up and fight. You have to, I mean, life will beat you to the curb, but
Yeah.
you have to take control of your
Yeah.
life and your journey, so that's why I really encourage patients.
I
The
read
crying
something
scene.
that said, I owe myself commitment, I owe myself determination. So you owe yourself that, and no one
Yeah,
else, really. I mean, everyone will try and help you, whether you need your medication, your guidance, but you owe yourself that push and being that warrior you speak of. And we're
so
talking about
true.
the warrior, the fighter. Yeah.
So true, so true. And I would also tell lupus patients, nothing is wrong with you by talking to yourself, talking to your joints, talking to your immune system, because I do that. The Bible said, life and death lies here. I speak life. Even though you feel like crap, you feel sick, you feel like you're not going to make it, you don't prophesy that over your life.
Just quickly share the contact details for
Sure.
our viewers, and then, we'll just get ready to wrap it up.
Sure, of course. So the Voice of Lupus Foundation, you can contact us via the Lupus Helpline 327-0220. You can reach us on WhatsApp. You can reach us on Facebook, Instagram. You can join the patient support group if you're a patient living in Trinidad and Tobago. You can like the page on Facebook as well. And of course, if you want to send us an email, voiceoflupus@gmail.com.
Yeah.
Lupus is LUPUS, okay? And remember, there is us in lupus.
Lupus. Thank you so much, Reeanna Harrilal. Not only are you just still an amazing broadcast journalist, hey, even though you don't offer 24/7 as you would like to, but also you're just one of those great persons in Trinidad and Tobago that standing strong behind this organization. Thank you so much for doing what you do. Again, Voice of Lupus. Check them out. Check out their website and all the information that Reeanna just presented. I thank you for giving me some of your time all the way in NYC. It's my favorite city, but not right now. I love to travel, but it's one of those things I'm like, I don't know when I'm heading back to NYC. But this is existing all over the world. So I don't even know when I'll be going just across the Sister Isle of Tobago, because we have to be very cautious at this point in time. So as we wait for that vaccine to come out so we can get back to some form of normalcy, we continue to educate and add insight inside of your world. This is J Chats. I'm JD. Join me inside the next episode. You never know. I could be talking about hair, makeup. You don't know. I can be talking about business, all that and more, because it's turning interest into insight. Thank you so much. Thank you, Ree, for your time, and God bless you.
You're most welcome. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Well, this is where I say thank you so much for allowing me in your world. I know you got your things to do, but you still tuned in, and I appreciate that. So don't forget, click subscribe, click the like, share, and just let all of us gather from the information that is being shared inside of J-Chats, even if it's the fun ones as well. Serious fun, whatever it is. Thank you so much. Be blessed. Stay safe. I'm JD.